Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining myself and Michael Bentley on a Monday lunchtime. I'm Laura Horton from Horton Consulting, and we work with practices to make them successful and profitable and really to help them move forward. One of the stumbling blocks that we always encounter when trying to move practices forward is HR. And it's really a topic and a subject where people become quite worried. The legal aspects are always in the back of their minds, but recruitment, is a positive, well, can be a positive thing. Motivating your team with appraisals is a positive thing, but of course, you do have the downsides as well. HR has changed a lot. It's something that you really need to be on top of. And Mike's going to give you a really good update today and explain capability training to you. And we're going to do a bit of a role play as well. I'm going to be a poor performing team member. So we'll show you exactly how you go through all the processes. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to hand you over to Mike. So if you just give me 1 second, I'm just going to change over to Mike. And Mike, if you could share your screen with everybody, please, that would be fantastic. Wonderful.
Can you see my screen?
I can see your screen. All right, then, Mike, over to you.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for joining the HR Masterclass webinar today. This is an introduction, really, to 2 days that I'm doing with the Dental Nurse Network in July. And I thought what would be really nice today would be to share a bit of a taster about what those 2 days are about. I've been in practice management for 15 years, so are fully conversant with the amount of changes that have happened in HR, how to manage staff, how to recruit staff, how to do competent appraisals, and a system that's come in. It's not brand new, but it's something that people are starting to work with a lot more now, which is capability performance, which is quite different to disciplinary management. So I'm going to explain that to you today, and I hope that will be very useful to you. So this is what we're going to be doing in the next hour, really, is having a chat about mastering capability. We're going to be looking at discipline. The key piece of feedback that I've had from advanced management is that I threw 8 hours of theory of capability management, recruitment, disciplinary and appraisals. And what there wasn't that much time to do was to do a lot of practical experience, so that everybody could take the skills that I was, if you like, preaching about and do them from a one-to-one, so I could come around, check language and all the things that I think are necessary to build confidence. One of the reasons that I feel that people don't deal with people that are poor performers is they don't feel confident enough to do so. And if they do make a mistake, they feel the consequences of that mistake could be, quite immense, really. So people tend to shy away from it and just say, oh, it's okay, it's another day tomorrow and everything will get better. Unfortunately, we do need to be managing performance. And the reason why I've zoomed in on capability is because it's a lot easier to manage poor performance under capability than it is around the traditional route of disciplinary. And I'll explain that in a little bit of time. So day one really is going to be about capability, and we're also going to do recruitment. So I'm going to do a heavy subject and a more light-hearted subject, so that we don't have, a day of like, oh my goodness, it's really heavy. And then day two we'll do disciplinary, and again, another flip side, we'll do appraisals as well. So, the good and the bad, and maybe I'm the ugly. We'll wait and see. So the aim. The aim is for practice owners and practice managers to be able to understand and put together the systems required for capability of performance. And I want you to have the confidence to undertake a capability and a disciplinary procedure, and to discover really that bespoke recruitment and suitable appraisals really can reflect the brand and really supports the individual employer, and really allows you to, if those 4 sections are done well, it should be part of your branding, and it should be a system that you do all of the time, so that you just get more confident of working with the systems, and it becomes a slicker process that you're not scared to do, you'll just get on with and do it. So the objectives then are to set capability systems and manage performance, have strong verbal skills to be able to deliver a capability and disciplinary process. I want you to know how to prepare and to utilise representatives to undertake capability and disciplinary hearings. I really want you to know the best system to use when recruiting for a new team member, and what range of tools you can use to support the decision-making process. And importantly, in appraisals, I want you to have a fair and consistent appraisal system that represents a cross-section of people that work in your practice and observe your team members working in your practice, and not just one objective like your objective or maybe one dentist's objective, because it's not enough to make an informed and fair and consistent appraisal for individuals. So that's the objectives. So let's look at the capability actual system itself. So capability is the bit in between disciplinary, the old style disciplinary, and just managing capability actual systems. Now I'm going to show you a slide now about what a capability system is, because you're going to look at this and think, I have no idea. So I'm just going to skip through and show you a slide that I want to do. So this is a capability slide, and this shows you one area of capability. And capability is all about doing the job that your team are expected to do on a daily basis. So the example I've chosen here is decontamination of equipment and working services to the required standard. And on your left-hand side, you can clearly see activities that people have to do to make sure that that is the required standard. So you've got disinfection and preparation of working services. You've got safe dismantling of sharps, manual scrubbing. Your system might be different to mine, obviously using, ultrasonics, and some of you will use sterilizers. You've got inspection of instruments. You've got the use of the different autoclaves. You've got the correct use of storage and transportation boxes. You've got the drying of the instruments to do, pouching instruments, and storage and rotation of instruments. All of those items are under decontamination of equipment and working services to the required standard. So in disciplinary, people may be aware that if somebody was making a mistake in one area, you would go down the disciplinary route to deal with that one process. If something happened that's entirely a different situation, so let's say somebody had a bagging problem, and then people had a problem with maybe dismantling sharps, for instance, each one of those would be a separate identity, and you would go down the disciplinary process for each one of those separately. Because we're now talking about capability is all about making sure that in the required standard of decontamination of equipment, people can do all those capabilities in the activity list. So if anybody is not measuring up to one of those activities, you can take them down the capability route, because obviously any one of those activities has an effect on whether that capability is going to meet the required standard or not. So if somebody isn't meeting the required standard, then they've got a problem with capability. So if I just flick back up to the capability system, the first item here is we need to deal with a performance issue or concern. So the performance issue or concern is exactly under the standard of decontamination. So if your concern is bagging instruments, they're not being signed correctly, that would be an issue and concern. Now, in the capability system, you will be doing training on every single activity area to make sure that the people understand exactly what is required of them. Okay? Once you've done that, you can then go back to them and say, right, we've trained you in this activity, which deals with the standard of decontamination, but you're not meeting the right capability because you're letting it down by X. And that could be bagging, it could be a matrix problem, it could be cement on instruments, it could be not using the magnifier correctly as part of the process. Whatever it may be, that could be the performance issue or concern. So with everything in practice, when you're training somebody, you need to have a system for the process. So there needs to be a system for doing whatever it is, and you need to do team training. And yes, it needs to be documented and it needs to be signed to say that the people that attended that training session understand what it is that they're supposed to be doing. If you're not doing that, then that's your first mistake. So yes, it's a long-winded activity to train everybody on every single item that they need to do in practice, but that's what you need to be doing so that you can actually take people down the capability route if there is a concern. Okay, so issue at the top, there's a system, you have to do the training, then you document the training, and that is your evidence. Okay. Now moving over to the left-hand side of the screen, you'll have system working. So if you know, let's say the bagging instrument policy, so people put instruments, you know, when they're clean and they've been dry linted and they put them in there, they've been inspected, there's no cementum on anything, you know, that is a perfect pack, it's sealed, you put your signed name on it so it can be understood, it's date stamped, and some people in practice write on exactly what it is. So it might be an examination pack, it might be a crown pack, it might be crown burrs, whatever it may be, that's what you put on the packet. That's your system. You only know if a system is working is if people are demonstrating that that is being followed. So if you've got a core group of your team doing that system, then you know your system's working, you can put it into the manual, and then every 6 months to a year, you schedule a repeat training of that system. And that will keep most of your systems working in a very good way, whether that's answering the telephone, dealing with x-rays, being a treatment coordinator, whatever it may be, you need to do your systems like that. If you come to a training session and there's a problem with a system and there's a number of people that have got a problem with the system, then that's when you need to recognise that the system in your practice has collapsed. So you need to review the system with your team and then put in a new system that the team then agree that they're going to follow. Examples of that have been is when I've been introducing all the care quality commission systems in the practice, you'll find that the system that you're going to put in is great, but it might not work against the other systems that you've already got in place. So the system isn't working because there's maybe not enough time to do it at a place where you've added it into the system. And one of the outcomes from our practice is definitely been developing the decontamination role and what that's going to be, so that key nursing duties are done by one system and decontamination take over another lot of systems. So again, you know, it's working through that with your team. So what happens when something isn't going right and you've got the same problem again and again? This is what Laura and I are going to role play in about 20 minutes time. But basically on the right hand side, you've got the processes of the capability system, and that's what we're going to role play today. And I'm going to use decontamination and what the system for that is, because I feel it's easier to demonstrate that as a webinar. And as I can't see you, I don't know whether there's any nodding heads or loads of shaped heads. So that's I'm going to keep it simple for today. So I'm going to go through the informal process, the formal meeting, the second formal meeting, the capability meeting, and ultimately dismissal. So that's the first quarter, is capability. The second part is about recruitment. And recruitment now is absolutely vital. It's one of those things that we need to get right from the outset, because let's face it, when we've got somebody in the team and we know that they're wrong, it's so difficult to manage them out of the team now without crossing a lot of boxes, that really I implore to you that you get your recruitment right and you spend more time doing recruitment. One interview for 15 minutes doesn't cut the mustard anymore. And if you're doing that and you're interviewing 8 nurses in 2 hours and you're making a decision, then you really shouldn't be. For any role in the practice now, you really need to think about you know, what is your vacancy? And that's a start. Who is it that you want to be in your team? What do they look like? What do they smell like? What job skills do they need? How do they need to mix in with the team? What skills don't you have that you'd like to put into the team? Those are all the things that you need to start thinking about when you've got a vacancy. Advertisement, there's loads of ways now to advertise vacancies. I actually think social media does work very well in advertising now for vacancies, because that's sort of the word of mouth really now. That's where Facebook and Twitter are working well. The agencies for key positions are still working well. CVs, I get a number of CVs sent to my practice on a weekly basis. They're worth keeping along, you know, so that when you've got a vacancy, you can start having a look at those CVs that match maybe the vacancy that you have. Advertise, yep, absolutely. For a specific role, it is useful to advertise in local newspapers, local online advertising agencies can be very, very useful as well. What I would say is the CV isn't enough. CVs only give you a broad outline of what people want you to know. And I need people to answer questions that I want an answer for. And that's why I do an application process. And one of the things that I'd share in the HR Masterclass is exactly what goes in that application process. You do need an application for your practices. So with the CVs and your application processes, it allows you to then shortlist candidates. And by shortlisting candidates, hopefully you've got people in that pool that when you meet them for an interview are going to be what you're wanting for from the vacancy that you originally had in mind, so the position that you had. And then you need to do a lot of things when you're interviewing somebody. One of the key things I do early is definitely exploring the CV, because I hate to say this, but some people can be flexible with the truth. And I always think that if you ask people about their CV, especially a few things that you think, you know, ask some questions about their qualifications, where they had them, what experience they had. And if they put on there that they've got particular interests or they've been on courses, ask them about the courses, ask them about the interest. You'll soon know whether or not they're telling you a bag of bully, or whether actually what they've got to say is useful on the CV, and actually you thought to yourself, oh, actually this person is exactly what they say they are. Then you need to do a clinical interview and a customer service interview. The clinical interview needs to be clinical questions, and clinical questions either can come from your own experiences, because some practice managers will have lots of experience as dental nurses. They will know about hygienist recruitment, dental recruitment. It depends on your background. But if you don't know what clinical questions to ask, then this is when you need to go back to your dentist and you need to get a clinical recruitment document for every clinical role. Dental nurse, an upskilled clinical dental nurse. You need to do one for treatment coordinator. You need to do one for a hygienist, for a therapist, for a clinical dental technician, obviously for an associate dentist, you know, and maybe a specialist dentist as well. So there's lots of clinical interviews that you're going to need. And all you need as a practice manager or somebody taking out the interviews is a list of the clinical questions and a list of the answers. And all you're doing is asking the clinical question and ticking the answers off. That's what you're doing. Okay, so the answers should be there for you in advance. Customer service is the most important part of the interview for me. I want to make sure that the person I've got in front of me is going to be right for my customers and right for my team. And that's where your customer service questions have to be really, really good, so that you can start to understand how this person operates within a team, you know, how they're going to be with patients. And I'll give you lots of useful questions to use in a customer service interview. And then other things that people don't think about is testing computer skills. You need to be testing those. You know, we all have to be savvy of putting our notes on now. So if you've got somebody that can't use a computer well, that could be a problem to you. So I would simply do note taking, do some base charting if it's a nurse, whatever it may be, and just take them around the systems. And I'll give you 4 or 5 things to do under computer skills that you'll ask people to do, and it's absolutely fine for you to do that, to make those tests. Mass tests, I feel, are very important, especially for front desk welcome staff that are known as receptionists. Receptionist is a banned word in my practice, but the welcome team, the patient care advisors, they need to know maths. Treatment coordinators need to know maths. They need to be able to work out percentages in their heads. It's not something that the calculators come out for. If you're selling membership, you need to know maths. If you're taking money over the counter, you need to understand maths. If you're poor at maths, then that could be a tricky point for you. Situational questions are really important with clinical members of your team. Definitely people that are going to manage a person, like a hygienist, like a therapist, like a dentist. I'm going to put to them situational questions of, if this patient presents with X, how are you going to deal with this? And I'm looking for, how is somebody going to manage the patient? And that's really, really important. And depending on how your practice operates, it depends on what you're going to hear. And I've got a number of situational questions that I will share with you. And then two things are going to happen with your candidate. They're either going to reach a practice benchmark or they're not. And if they don't reach practice benchmark, I normally score out of 0 to 4. 4 being the evidence that they're providing is absolutely mega amazing. 3 is the evidence is really strong and really answers the questions that you want, and they're ticking a lot of boxes off. 2 is really the evidence isn't there, it's weak, it comes and it goes. And 1 is that they haven't answered the question at all, and that they've talked a lot, but they haven't really given you what it is that you're looking for out of the question. And 0 really is that they've gone off the planet, or they've gone, I don't know how to answer the question. You can rephrase questions, but if you get I would just say, don't worry about that. Let's ask you another question. Moving on. You're doing really well. And if you've got somebody that isn't working out right, just keep doing that and just saying, that's a fantastic, thanks for your response to that answer. We'll move on to the next question. If it's obviously somebody you really like and they're getting on well with them and they're starting to score 3 and 4s, then by all means ask them more questions if it feels it will give a lot more evidence about you making an informed decision. And then what you're going to have to do is, for those people that have reached best benchmark, I normally find in my practice that you come out with 1 or 2 people that you're just thinking, oh, I don't know which one's quite right. And this is where I do a test day or a second interview. If you're employing dental nurses and you've already got a team of dental nurses in place, allow them to have that team member for the day, because they will root out whether or not they're going to work with this person or they're not. And if they come back and give you a thumbs up, then that's a really, really good indication of giving somebody a job, because it means that they're going to be very, very well supported in your team, and that's only a win-win for you. Okay. If it's a clinician, I would do a second interview, and at this stage you could add in somebody else to that second interview. So if you want to have the owner of the practice in with that second interview, so that they can ask a further range of questions to make sure. If it's an associate dentist, I would definitely be doing that on a second interview. You want your business owner and yourself there before you make that type of decision. In my opinion, if a practice manager is well skilled, they can employ everybody else, and the business managers don't need to be involved. They just need to have a conversation, a meet-up, just to talk about the applicants that have been interviewed, where the evidence is, and why they should be employed. And the rest of it really is to do with how you manage feedback and what you put into contracts, and I'll share with you how to put a contract together. So that's recruitment, a little buzz down on that. The next one is to do with disciplinary. And disciplinary is one that we all know about, but disciplinary has now changed. So where we're doing disciplinary now, it's to do with examples of misconduct or gross misconduct. So really it's to do with something in the contract that's not being adhered to here, something like sickness, for example. But I've got some. So examples of misconduct would be unsatisfactory even timekeeping, level of attendance, minor breaches of policy, damage to your property, time wasting in the practice, refusal to follow instructions that have been clearly laid out. One of the biggest ones I'm finding in practice, of course, is telephones, personal calls, mobile phones, going onto Facebook in the middle of the day. That's become a really big misconduct issue. Obscene language, negligence of performance, and then moving on to gross misconduct, you've got theft or fraud, physical violence, misuse of property or the name. That's really important when people are going out and doing marketing, that that they don't actually do you any damage through inappropriate conversation, when they're doing marketing experience for you. Oh yeah, they're not a very good practice really, or oh yeah, I'd definitely go there. Whatever it may be, you might find things like that happening. Harassment of an employee, that's massive. Bringing the organisation in disrepute, obviously coming in under the influence of alcohol, illegal drugs, other substances. You're getting the idea. So gross misconduct and examples of misconduct are definitely the disciplinary route now, and they've made that more simple. So you've got the issue or concern, so let's say it's to do with timekeeping. You can have evidence of when the timekeeping has been poor. You'll do an investigation, you'll find out why the timekeeping has become a problem. If it's to do with welfare, like a childcare situation, you need to try and work a solution out for them. And then if they adhere to that solution and they're still in breach of timekeeping, that's when you can start to do a disciplinary interview, discuss what's gone on previously, what they agreed to and that they haven't agreed to, and then you can break and consider evidence and then look at your disciplinary action. And what's really interesting on disciplinary now is that the first warning is a first written warning, not oral recorded anymore, because capability has taken over, actually focusing in on somebody's actual performance from a day-to-day basis. We're dealing with here in disciplinary an example of a misconduct or gross misconduct, so it's much more serious and it's something that needs to be dealt with very quickly. Okay, but we'll go over that a lot more obviously through the training sessions, and it is 2 days, so I'm working through this very quickly, but you can see distinctly that this process is quite different to what you may be used to. So for example, if it was poor timekeeping, and people do have that as an issue as I go around to practices, as long as you've brought that issue to the table, you've investigated thoroughly, you've got your representation clearly on board, you've put some action points in to support maybe a welfare concern, and somebody's still doing that incorrectly with the timekeeping, and you've already made all those allowances and agreements, you can take somebody to first written warning quite quickly. It's not something that has to be long drawn out anymore. And then if they still don't adhere to that after a first written warning, you obviously have to put in some more actions and give them a suitable amount of time to come back on board with timekeeping. But if they don't, you do the whole thing again, break and consider evidence. You could be doing final written warning, and they could be dismissed quite quickly on something as important, on making sure that somebody's coming into work on time. Okay. Obviously there is an appeals procedure to disciplinary, and there is a review period, so we will discuss all of that, but that is what disciplinary is about. It's about dealing with examples of misconduct and gross misconduct. It's not about bagging instruments as a capability. That's where the main changes are. The fourth one is a nice one. It's about appraisals, and this is where it's about having a system that is fair and consistent for all. And I've brought in a system into my practice which allows me to look at all the areas of the business that I feel are important. So team working with each other, the knowledge and use of practice procedures, what their patient care is like, do they follow protocols and procedures, and mapping all of those is a series of questions to go through to manage performance. And when you manage performance in that way, it allows you to do a cross-section of answering people. So who grades is definitely got to be a number of people, not just you, but it needs to be a senior colleague, can be the owners of the practice. Definitely recommend all dentists to be involved. Dental therapists, it's there 4 days a week. would be, you know, most suitable to doing a grading. I go through a lot of questions about how you go about grading people, and I think that's really important, the questioning that you actually do with people. So one of the areas that I do, for instance, let's just give you some clinical questions that I do. So one of them in clinical would be to check lab work in advance, prepare appropriate decontamination, and mark clearly, resolve any issues of work not back. Another clinical one would be to make sure that the printing of all treatment plans are done with the cost-bearing items, and full price examination recalls are put on in advance. To remain with the provider as a chaperone and the suitable chaperone support. For patient journey, I do things like every patient is always welcome with a smile, that people create conversation with patients throughout treatment to relax and support providers. That gives you a couple of questions for that one. Team working, achieving harmony in the practice and create a warm, happy atmosphere. To maintain productive relationship with all providers in order to promote mutual understanding and produce the highest standards of service delivery. And I've got another one which is about business. So all patients are asked for new patient referrals to build our business by word of mouth, that people actively discuss and promote dental finance to secure treatment plans, that we do discuss and promote membership programs with all of our patients at the practice. So I normally have in each area about 15 to 30 questions, and they are all graded individually from 1 to 5. So 1 being poor knowledge, 2 being reasonable knowledge, 3 is good, 4 is high, 5 is excellent. Between 3 to 5, I'm not concerned with the team members. It means that they're following the systems well and they're demonstrating what sort of level that they're at. For people that have been in your team longer and are taking on more responsibility, you would expect them to fall between 4s and 5s. Those people that are newer to your team, you want to be aiming them for good as their, you know, the lowest standard. If you've got reasonable achievement or poor achievement, that's when you need to be using the appraisal system and using what's reasonable and poor, and then looking at the capabilities in those reasonable and poor areas and be working with the capabilities to improve the grading and the point system that they're actually getting. What the appraisal system allows you to do is to combine the performance grades of all the individuals together, and then you can deliver an appraisal that is fair and consistent and is marked by maybe 3 to 5 people in the practice, so the scoring is absolutely fair and it's consistent for everybody. So if you've got one dentist that favours somebody in particular, by the time you've had 5 people grade, you're going to get a much more fair, a medium response to the actual grading system. And it allows you then to see where the team are, where the actual results are in the team. So for clinical, for instance, all of my nurses graded between 4 and 4.4. So that means that they're all working at a very high level for clinical. So it's demonstrating to me that the training that these individuals are having is producing the results, and that's being seen by all the people that are actually grading these individuals. And that for me really gives me the motivation to keep training the team and working with them so that the appraisals demonstrate the hard work that they're putting into the practice. If there is problems, like business always creates a few interesting scores, it normally means that we have to work harder as practice managers to focus a team on, you know, the business, whereas perhaps, you know, they work really hard in surgery doing clinical, but they really struggle with how they can affect the business and where their effects actually are. So, you know, you really need to look at the business aspects. And then you'll have an action list for the performance that you've done, and then you'll schedule their next one. That's a bit complicated over a webinar, but you know, we'll really start to knuckle down and start to go through all the different pieces that you need to do appraisals in the practice. So the day 1 agenda will be capability theory, And then capability practical. I really want you to have practical knowledge. And I think without confidence of doing things practically, you can never actually do the skill. You know, dentists don't go on courses just to listen. They actually go to work on phantom heads and to actually start to use the skills that they're hearing in practice. And then again, you've got recruitment theory and recruitment practical. And then on day 2, we're looking at disciplinary theory, capability practical, and appraisal theory and recruitment practical. That's not quite right, actually, is it? It should be appraisal theory, appraisal practical, and disciplinary theory, disciplinary practical. Excuse me, that slide is wrong. Apologies. Right, so let's dip into the capability system and get Laura on board, doing some role play. So the 4 rules with capability are: you need to do the capability with supervision, without supervision, trainers and coordinators. So let's have a look at how that looks here. That's easier to look. So going back to decontamination of equipment and working services, the required standard, each activity, this is when you need to train. So you need to train disinfection and preparation of working surfaces and bracket tops and demonstrate the zoning. And the employee must tick whether they can do that under supervision. So if they're just an apprentice that have just come in, that's the grade that they'll be ticking on for a while until they can do it without supervision. Then you'll have some people in your team that can train others to do that activity. They need to make sure that they can train the activity perfectly so that that person can do it without supervision. Because if there is a problem with that capability activity, then it will be down to the person that's trained them. If they say in their capability meeting, I don't understand the training that I've had, I can't put a matrix band together because I don't understand, even with the training, how to do that. So can train others, they need to be very competent to be able to train an activity. So that is a responsibility. And the other box is the coordination box. So a lot of people will be coordinating the practice. So they might have roles of responsibility. So for something like managing stock, for instance, that would be in my practice a coordinator role, and they would have a number of activities to say that they can do without supervision to match that responsibility. However, there'll be a number of team members that won't tick a number of those activities because they aren't responsible for them. So it's not an activity for all. It might be some people tick lots of different activities for the specific roles that they're doing. But decontamination obviously does affect everybody. So the 4 rules then is they should be able to do, first of all, with supervision, which is why they're training. Without supervision is where you want everybody to be when it's something like decontamination. You'll have some people that are trainers in the practice that can train that actual activity, and coordinators who have the actual responsibility to be a coordinator for, maybe it could be treatment coordination, it could be managing the appointment diary, whatever that may be. The capability, policy and procedure, that is exactly what it is. That is it, the procedure of capability. And the procedure may be used for all employees who are finding it difficult to perform in their role and who will be supported and treated fairly. This procedure shall be applied where you fail or are unable to achieve or demonstrate the standard performance required, whether due to lack of application, lack of ability or skill, or lack of capability through ill health, loss or failure to obtain a qualification required for the post. That's really important, that one, and we'll discuss that a lot more in HR Masterclass of what happens when people don't attain a qualification when you've employed them to do something specifically. And then the management have a duty to ensure that standards are established and communicated to all employees via the appraisal system, job description and statement of terms and conditions of employment. So performance should be monitored and you'll be given appropriate information, instruction, guidance and training to meeting the standards required. So the starter capability is set up a training matrix of capabilities. Every job needs to be set up as a system in the matrix. Train everyone the same, do fair and consistent training. The trainers must have signed to say that they're competent to do the training, and on completion of each training session, you make sure that it is signed. And that's where you come to this. If you do this for every single activity, and part of the HR Masterclass with me is I'm going to give you the dental nurse capability sheet. It's 12 pages in my practice, so you'll get something that's really robust that you can go back and use and make you feel very confident about doing capability. We'll also look at the front desk care as well, and their standards as well, and then we'll have a talk about maybe bespoke roles in the practice, because I've got most of the bespoke roles that you can have: senior nurse, upskilled clinician, dental technician, you know, finance manager, those kind of things. They need different activities to be illustrated to them. So we're going to have a chat now with Laura. Laura, you there?
I'm here, yeah.
Great. And Laura and I are going to do a role play about each process. So this is the informal process for somebody that isn't matching a capability, and I'm going to use decontamination of equipment and working services to the required standard. That's the one I'm going to work with Laura on. So let me just tell you what the informal process is. So the informal process, or the meeting, is the first stage in the process is for the line manager to hold an informal meeting with you, the employee, to discuss the evidence that you're failing to meet the standards required, and to discuss how the situation can be improved. This may be discussion held within the appraisal process, which is why I said in appraisals, you know, people are scoring 1s or 2s. That's where you can start having a chat about, you know, some informal things that are going on. And as a result of the meeting, a file will be made and an action plan agreed with this individual. So this is the good chance meeting. This is alerting to somebody that we've got a few concerns in this, and this. We need to do something about it. This is how I'm going to support you. Let's agree an action plan. See you a couple of weeks later, and then move it forward from there. Okay? So the ideal outcome from this informal process is, if the performance improves and reaches the required standard, no further action will be taken. And that is what you want. You should wanting to be doing good informal process meetings, so you don't need to do anything else, because after this one, everything gets heavy. So let's go back to doing some role play with Laura. So I would start any session with, you know, saying to Laura that I'm going to meet up with you today, Laura, at whatever time it is, so people are aware. Don't just drag somebody into an office because they're unprepared, and say, Laura, I'm just going to see you at about 11 o'clock today for an informal chat. Okay? And that's how we start. All right, so let's make it up that we are at 11 o'clock and we're going to have an informal meeting with Laura. So this is the start of the role play. Are you ready, Laura?
I'm ready, yes.
Are you ready to be a naughty employee?
I'm ready to be naughty.
Super. So, right then, Laura, I brought you here today because I'm a little bit concerned about some of the standards in decontamination of equipment and working services. So in front of me, Laura, I've got the activities that go into the decontamination of equipment and working services to the required standard. Now, you are familiar with these standards, aren't you, Laura?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. Now, do you remember that we did do a formal training session in the practice when you started 2 months ago about all the activities that we needed to complete? And you have ticked on here that you can do all of these without supervision. Are you comfortable that you can do all of these without supervision?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Good. Okay. What I want to do today is I just want to present some evidence, Laura, that I've had about some of the areas, some of the activities that you're not actually doing to the required capability standard. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So the first activity, disinfection and preparation of working services and bracket tops and demonstrate zoning, I feel that you do understand that and you're doing that well. Would you agree with that? Have you got any concerns with that at the moment?
No, I don't have any concerns with that bit, no.
Okay. The second activity is, Laura, the safe dismantling of sharps equipment, matrix bands, syringes, and scalpels. And what I have noticed is that a lot of your matrix bands, you're either not doing them or you're just putting through them as a dirty matrix band without actually taking them apart. Are you aware that you are doing that?
I am. I do find them difficult, and
Do you?
yeah, I worry that I'm going to cut myself. I feel like I'm always, probably even once a day, I feel like I'm about to cut myself on the matrix band.
Okay. So is that your main reason for leaving them dirty and just putting them through a cycle?
Yeah, yeah, I know it's not right, but I sort of panic.
Oh, okay. Did you actually tell anybody that you were struggling with a matrix band, or have you kept that to yourself?
I've kept it to myself.
Okay, that's okay. I mean, that's what today's about, really, is just, sort of reassuring you that, we are going to support you with matrix bands. So what I suggest that we do is that you've been working with Emma. Has that been going well working with Emma?
Yeah, she's really good. Yeah.
Good. Okay. So if Emma demonstrates to you how to change three matrix bands that are dirty, and gives you the confidence that they can be done safely, would you prepare to do three matrix bands back to Emma that are dirty to show that you are competent to do them going forward? Would you be happy to do that?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll make that the action point for that then, Laura, that Emma will demonstrate three to you. You'll demonstrate three back to Emma, and then we'll see how that's going in about 2 weeks' time. Is that all right?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, good. The other area that we're concerned with in the activity list is the manual scrubbing technique.
Right.
I've noticed, and I've got some bags with me today of instruments that you've done. That can you actually see that you've left cement on the ball end burnisher here,
Mm,
and the cement on this carver there?
yeah, sorry.
Can you see
I
that?
can, yeah.
Now that is a dirty instrument. There's no way that that's going to be used, and it's also being bagged by you as well. So one of the other things is that haven't done the inspection process properly.
Right.
Okay,
Okay.
so when you've been pouching the instruments, you've not checked to see that there's cement on there, because one of the things that you could have done is you could have tried to get the cement off and just put those instruments through again, and you haven't. You've actually, labeled them. And the other thing is that on the activity pouching instruments correct labeling, I'm also concerned that yours varies, and I've got a number of packets in front of me here. That's why I've got all these packets in front of me. That it's really difficult to know that these instruments are you because your signature isn't consistent.
Is it
Can you
not?
see that?
Oh, I thought it was. I didn't think that was a problem.
Can you see the range of your signature is really different on these
Yeah, now
bags?
you're showing me. Yeah, I can see. I,
Yeah.
I thought I was
And
doing
that's why it's important that I've shown you this. So what I mean, let's go back a little bit. So how are you coping with, obviously there's lots of cement on instruments. Are you struggling with the cement? Is that what the problem is, or did you
I
just know
am,
it
yeah,
was
I find
there?
it really hard to get off. It's just stuck on there. Um,
Okay. Well, one of the tips when I was nursing that I did that I found really works well is that obviously the dentists are really concentrating on the procedure that they're doing, but we know as nurses that the cement is going to dry on there very quickly, and it is difficult to get it off. So the little microsid wipes that we've got in the surgeries.
mm,
Yeah. When you know that they're working with cement or a difficult material, then have one of those wipes in your hand. And when you know that they've finished using it, just say, "Oh, could I just have that instrument from you?" And then you can wipe it immediately, and that will get some of the main residue off that, so that it's not such a battle for you. And I would definitely do that going forward.
yeah, I didn't know if it was okay to ask the dentist. I just felt a bit awkward. So
Yeah,
it's
definitely. And
definitely
what
a good
I'll do
idea.
is I'll
I'll do
mention to
that.
the dentist that you
Yeah.
are going to be asking them for the dirty instruments,
Okay.
just to prompt you for a little bit, just to support you.
Yeah.
So if
Okay.
they're using anything like a ball-ended burnisher, a flat plastic, a carver, or a probe, and they know that they've been using the active cement,
Mhm.
I'll get them to support you and hand that over until you've got into a bit more of a system of actually wiping them.
Okay. Yeah,
Is
that'd be
that all
good.
right?
Yeah, that's great.
Okay. The third thing I want to do with you today is I know this is going to sound, a little bit strange, but I want you to sign this piece of paper with your signature on it now, and
Hmm.
I want you to use that signature going forward, so I know this signature is for the instruments that you've been pouching up. Is
Okay,
that all
yeah,
right?
that's fine.
Because you really need to have the same consistently that Emma's been training you. So the
Hmm.
signature needs to be in the right hand section of the pouch. And then we need the stamp in the middle, and on the left hand side, we need what the instruments are. So if they're
Okay.
an exam pack or a crown pack or whatever that may be. Are you comfortable with that?
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay. So if you just sign here
Hmm.
for me of the signature that you're going to use, this is the signature that I expect you to use every time you do a pouch from now on. Is that all
Okay.
right?
Yes, that's fine.
Happy with that?
Yep.
Okay. So, Laura, you are doing really well. I just want to let you know all the other activities in that section, I feel that you are doing comfortably. Have you got any other concerns or anything that you're unhappy about at the moment? Anything you want my support with?
No, everything's fine. Thank you.
Okay, good. So what I suggest that we do is that we meet in 2 weeks' time and we just have a chat through and make sure that this area is to the required standard. Would you be
Hmm.
happy with that?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay, and we'll go through. So I'll get a session with Emma organised to do the matrix bands. Three to her. She'll do three, you'll do three, and then you'll go to Lane and see how you're getting on. I
Okay.
want to make sure that your signing and your bags are consistent. I want you to make particular attention with all the cementum that you've been missing off the instruments. Okay,
Hmm.
use the wipes. I'll have a word with the dentist as well to make sure that they're aware of what concerns that I've got and trying to support you with those.
Okay,
How does that
brilliant.
sound?
That sounds great. Thank
Is
you.
that all right?
Yep, brilliant.
Fantastic. All right, then we'll leave it there today, Laura, and I'll see you in about 2 weeks' time.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Yep.
Right. That is role play one. How did that feel to you, Laura, as an employee?
Fine, yes. It was very fair and the evidence was there.
Excellent. That's the right answer. So the next one is demonstrating is the formal meeting. This is the next step. So we're still doing it on the decontamination of equipment and working services. Now the difference is that on this meeting, I've already got evidence to present to Laura that the cement advice hasn't been taken on, and I've got a number of packets in front of me with instruments covered with a cement, which is incorrect, and also the signing is definitely still variable from time to time. So I've got 4 bags that have not been signed correctly, and I've got 3 bags in front of me that have still got cement residue left on the instrument. And because of that, I'm going to invite Laura to a formal process meeting. So now I've got to actually invite her to that meeting. So that's what I'm going to do with Laura now. Laura, you happy to go with that?
I am, yep.
Okay. Hi, Laura. I hope you're well. I've asked you to come and see me today because you know that we had a meeting a couple of weeks ago about some of the standards that I was concerned with decontamination of equipment. Do
Yep,
you remember that meeting?
I do, yep.
Well, unfortunately, Laura, there are a couple of things that I'm still have my concerns about.
Right,
One's to do with signatures on the pouches, and the other one is to do with cement left on instruments.
right, okay.
Okay, so what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to invite you to a formal process. And at that, we're going to go through the evidence that I've got, and then you'll have time to discuss with me, why I've got this evidence and, how you're feeling about it. All right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's going to be a formal process, Laura, I am going to have representation at the meeting, and I'm going to have Martine as my representation. And what Martine's going to do is she's going to write notes for me, and be my witness to everything that's happening. If you would like representation at the meeting as well, then you're more than welcome to have that. But you do need to select somebody in the practice that you'd like to have as your representation. It can't be a friend or family member, and you're not part of a union, are you?
No.
No. So it is going to have to be somebody in the practice. You don't have to have somebody in here, but you know, you can if you want to. And what they're here to do is they're here to take notes on your behalf. But also, if there's a question that you feel you don't understand, then they can actually ask me to put the question in a different way, or to clarify a question if they feel that you're not actually understanding what it is that I'm saying.
Okay.
All
Yeah.
right.
Mhm.
What they can't do in the meeting, Laura, is they can't answer questions for you, and they can't really get involved in the conversation we're having. So
Okay.
the questions will go to you and you'll need to answer those questions.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's yeah, it
Okay.
does.
All right. Now I've got a representatives document to give to the person if you do have a representation, but we're going to put the meeting for you in 72 hours. So it's Tuesday today, so I think we should have the meeting on Friday at 4 o'clock.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And within the next 24 hours, I need you to come to me and just tell me whether or not you are going to have representation, so I
Okay.
can have a small meeting with that person and actually go through their roles as representation, because they might not have done that before. Is
Okay.
that all right?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, well, that's it for today, Laura. Don't forget to come and tell me who your representation is in the next 24 hours.
Okay.
This is the meeting that we're going to have, and I'll put that in writing to you now.
Mhm.
And I'll see you on Friday at 4 o'clock.
Okay. All right then.
Okay,
Okay.
right, that's it. That's the end of that meeting. So that's your informed meeting of the formal process. I hope that that's okay through a webinar, because that's quite hard to do. Is that all right, Laura? Did you feel okay with that?
Yeah, it was fine. Can you just explain to everyone why you have booked it in for 4 o'clock?
Yes, I can. I booked it in for 4 o'clock on a Friday for two reasons. One, after doing a formal meeting, most people aren't really capable of going back to work. They might fall apart. They might start crying in the meeting. The meeting might take longer. So if you do it at the end of a day, it means that you can run over confidently, knowing that A, that you've got the time to do that, and secondly, at the end of the meeting, you can say, right, we've put a line under it today. We've sorted everything out. We've got an action plan, and we'll see you bright and breezy Monday morning.
Thank you.
Is that a good enough answer?
It was, yeah.
Super. Right then, so we'll do the formal process now. So the formal process states, how are we doing for time, Laura?
It's 2 o'clock.
Okay. So the formal process is when the line manager considers that your performance has fallen below an acceptable standard, and where informal discussion has not resulted in sufficient improvement, and a formal meeting shall be held to establish the reasons for poor performance. Because we've lost a little bit of time, I'm just going to go through the role play with Laura, and we'll wrap it up there, do any questions that people have got, and then you can always email me with any other questions, on the email at the end. Hopefully that sounds all right. So if we do the formal meeting, Laura,
Yeah.
we'll do that now.
Okay.
Ready?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Hi, Laura. Thanks for coming to the formal meeting today. Just want to say that it is, it's Friday the 17th of April. It is 4 p.m. As you can see, I've got my representation, who's Martine Graham today, who's going to take the notes of this meeting for me. And you've brought along Kathy to be your representation today. Kathy, thanks for coming along to the meeting. Kathy, we had a meeting yesterday about your role as a representation, and I know, Kathy, you are comfortable to support Laura today. Obviously, if Kathy was in the room, everybody, Kathy would say, yes, she is. Okay, so we're going to start the meeting. Okay, so Laura, we talked informally about some activities that weren't at the correct standard for decontamination of equipment. So I just want to go through a couple of activities and just check that we did the training for you.
Mhm.
First off, we did do training for you to do with matrix bands. So Emma's had you for demonstrated safely 3 matrix bands to you, and you've actually demonstrated 3 back to Laura, and she came back to me and she said that you were more than capable of doing the matrix bands. Do you agree that you were happy with that training?
Yes, definitely.
Fantastic. And do you know what? That's going really well. We've not had any dirty matrix bands. So I just wanted to say, well done for that, because I know that that was something that you were unconfident about, and you're now doing that really well. Okay.
Okay.
Um, the two areas that I'm still got concerns with, Laura, are to do with cement on instruments. I've got 3 bags of instruments here in front of you, and I just want to show you closely. Can you see that flat plastic is absolutely covered in cement?
Mm.
This ball-ended burnisher has got a real problem, and that probe has just got a massive dollop at the end. And you have had the training for this, and it concerns me that you're missing this on a quite regular basis. I mean, this is dated the 11th of April, this one is the 9th of April, and that one's the 6th of April. So it's happening a few times over the last couple of weeks. Can you see that?
I can, yes, yeah.
How do you feel about being shown that on the instruments? What have you got to say about it?
I have started wiping some of the instruments. I haven't been wiping all of them, because sometimes it's just a bit awkward to ask for them. And yeah, I've still just been struggling to get everything off. And then I think it's worse at the end of the day because I'm just rushing to get everything finished and just,
Okay.
chucking everything in the bags, really.
And are you asking for any support to help you, or have you just been?
I've just been trying to do it all as quickly as possible, so I don't hold
And
anybody up.
right, okay. Do you get the importance of, obviously, those instruments are not fit for purpose,
I do,
and
yeah. I know they're not. I know they're not.
okay. And the training indicates that you do understand how to do the packaging of instruments, that you do understand how to manually scrub the instruments and what the technique is.
Mm.
You do know how to use the magnifying glass. Do you feel like you do know how to do all of
I
those
Yeah, I do
on a
know how
regular
to.
basis?
I do know how to do it all. It's just I'm not. I just need to be a bit more consistent, and I need to be more careful with it.
Okay. And the other area that we looked at was obviously the signatures as well, didn't we? And
Mm.
I've got the piece of paper here that you've signed. And what's worrying me is I've got a number of bags here and it's quite a lot. Can you just see your signature just doesn't match? I mean, the good news is in these bags, the instruments are clean, so that's absolutely fine. But how do I know that really these are yours? It's a process of elimination that I know that these bags are yours because I've got everybody else's signatures and they all match, but
Mm.
they've been brought to me that they're not being signed correctly. Can you see that there's a major inconsistency here
I
between
can, yeah,
them?
and I've just got to stop rushing. Perhaps I feel like I'm rushing around, and that's when I'm letting everything go down, aren't I?
I feel so.
Mm.
I feel so. I feel that you've had time to improve all of these areas, Laura. We did have an informal chat. I've got evidence here that you did sign. I've got a number of packets here that, I just feel that are not meeting the right capability and it's not meeting the standard in the activities that you've signed to say that you can do without supervision. Would you agree with that?
I do agree. Yeah.
Okay. Well, today I am going to have to put a formal process warning onto your file because you're not meeting the right capability here.
Okay.
It's going to be on your file for 6 months, and you know you still have a major opportunity to improve here. I want you to improve, and I know that you can actually do all of these things and meet the required standard. And it's now for you to make sure that you do that every single day. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah. So, are you saying that I've got a verbal warning, or
You'll have a formal process warning, which will be in writing, and
right?
I'll put down the areas that you haven't met the required standard for. So I'm going to put that you haven't reached the capability for the decontamination of equipment and working services to the required standard. And the two areas that you're not doing properly is that you're not doing the manually scrubbing technique.
Mhm.
You're also not inspecting the instruments using the illuminated magnifier, and you're not pouching the instruments and doing correct labelling.
Okay.
Okay, so those are the three activities I feel that that you're not doing, and you're not matching the right capability for this standard. Do you
Okay.
agree with that?
I do, yeah.
Okay, so those are three areas that I'm going to put in. I know you can do it. You can do it, can't you?
I can do it, yeah.
Yeah, and I want you to do it. So basically today, I've got to put that under a formal process because you're not meeting the required standard. And that's my job, to make sure that you do reach the required standards that we need.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm going to put that in a letter. It will go on your file for 6 months that we've had this formal process meeting today. And I want to see you in 2 weeks' time. And I want to see a complete clean bill that all those activities in that required standard are achieved, because you can do it, can't you?
I can, yeah.
All right. Have you got any questions? Have you got any concerns? Anything that you want me to do for you? Any other support that you need? Any other outside concerns that you have?
Oh no, everything's fine. It's just I know what I need to do.
Okay, good. All right then, we'll leave it there today. I'll put that letter in writing to you. You'll have to sign that letter. All the notes from today's meeting that Martine's written and Kathy's written, we'll have copies of those both each for your file. Okay. The good
Okay.
news is if you do all these standards correctly, in 6 months' time, your file will be absolutely clean. All
Okay.
right. So
Okay.
just do what you know that you can do, and that'll be the end of it. All right.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thanks for today, Laura. Have a good weekend, and we'll see you on Monday. That's it. That's the end of that role play. Okay. Now, from a time point of view, we're not going to have time to do the other role plays that are needed. So the actual dismissal one. So we'll do that if you do the training.
I'm not being
But
sacked today then.
you're not being sacked today. Congratulations, Laura. You've actually done the activities needed.
Yay.
Woohoo! So in my practice, we do a staff competence record, which is on your screen now. So it goes through all the different areas. And as I reiterated earlier, you'll get a copy of that and the one for the front desk team as well, so that you really are clear with what you're doing. We'll do lots of examples like that so that you've got really good skills that you can learn, and we'll rotate it round so that you can be the representation, you're the one leading the meeting, somebody's the employee, so you can get a really good understanding of what it is that you need to do. But if it's done well, this makes your life very, very simple, and these slides just show that to you. So the capability, the trick is setting up all the systems well. That's what you need to do as managers. You will receive a template of the clinical systems as part of the training, and the front desk systems. We will discuss on how to set capabilities for specific roles like treatment coordinators, finance managers, people that are managing stock, they're upskilled nurses, managing patients. We will talk about what happens when someone is qualified, but they can't do what they are supposed to be doing under their qualification. That's really interesting. So maybe somebody's been trained to do x-rays and you've invested all that time in them, and then they refuse to do x-rays. That would fall under capability. Really interesting one, that. And then, of course, we'll do lots of role play to actually increase your confidence. And hopefully from those 2 sessions, you can see that actually it's not quite as scary as you think. It's quite how Laura's portrayed it today. Most people react in that way. They're like, I can see the evidence, I just need to improve. Has anybody got any questions? If anybody has got any questions, just type them in the box now. I'm quite happy to answer a few questions.
Yeah, I've got one question here. Who would fill in the capability assessment form that you use, the employee or the supervisory staff member?
I would say that as long as the training, if they're the trainer, that they can fill out the capability. So in my practice, Rachel is training manager, and Emma is my senior nurse. She will be the one that ticks that with the employee.
Okay, fantastic. Brilliant. Let's just see if there's any more. I'd just like to say thank you ever so much, Mike. I know there was a lot of information you want to get across. And if we had more time, what you would have actually seen is Mike would have actually fired me because my performance didn't improve. And those scenarios, we've done something very simple today, bagging instruments. Yes, if people don't follow those systems, you can get rid of them by following the correct HR procedures that Mike's showing to you. It's the same for, you know, having a bad attitude, being negative. You know, many other things fall into that. But it's important to be confident because it's not actually that bad. I was playing my part down because I know from having these conversations with team members that's how they do react. You know, they're very quiet and honest, and then ultimately they get upset. But I wasn't going to cry on you all today.
Oh, that's a shame.
Cry on you another day, mate. But you know, the 2 day course is a fantastic course. It is very practical, and it's in July. It's on the 22nd and 29th. They're Tuesdays. Um, they're with Mike. He's going to give you all the capability assessments and templates that he's just mentioned, and it's only £250, including VAT, for the 2 days. And that course is hosted by the Dental Nurse Network. So if you go onto their website, you can book your place online now. Um,
It's
yeah,
under the human resources section.
yeah, courses,
Um,
then human resources. You'll find it
yeah,
there.
and it's at Hamish in London. It's a really good venue actually. So yeah, it works very, very well. It's got good links.
Cool. Right. So I've recorded this, so I'll pop it on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Google Plus, all of that this evening. So if you want to listen back to any of it, you can. And hopefully we'll see some of you on the HR Masterclass, the 2 day course. Thank you ever so much, Mike. Have a great afternoon, everybody.
No, you're welcome. Thank you. Bye, everyone.